members. The panel on food safety and environmental hygiene meeting has formed a quorum, and this is the appointed time. And let's give a start. And this meeting will be extended till 5:30 because we'll be receiving deputations. First, confirmation of minutes. The minutes have been circulated to members beforehand. Any questions? No? All right, confirmed. Information papers. Now, in relation to the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of November 2013 have been forwarded to members. All right, no problem. And since the last meeting, some information papers have been issued, altogether 7 of them. So please, would you please note the information papers? And Dr. Kwok Kee and Mr. Stephen Ho, together with Mr. Chan Han Pan, wrote in and asked about the fish feed for using polluted materials, and a reply has been given, which has been tabled. Now on to item 3. Now, if there are no questions, let's look at the items for discussion at the next meeting. Next meeting will be scheduled for the 17th of January. We're going to hold a special meeting. And the time of the meeting will be 4:30 to 6 p.m. in this conference room number 1, where we will have a policy briefing from the Director of Bureau of Food and Health Bureau on the policy address of the Chief Executive for 2014. All members will be invited to attend the meeting. And the next regular meeting will be held on the 11th of February, Tuesday, in the afternoon in conference room 3. And next meeting we are going to discuss total diet study, which is an item proposed by the administration, and regulatory control on sale of chilled meat in fresh provision shops, which has also been raised by some members, and the AFCD's fees and charges. These are on the list of outstanding items for discussion. So 3 items for the time being for the next meeting. Any questions? Mr. Wong Kok Heng. Madam Chair, I wish to tell the Director of Bureau through you that concerning the agenda on the importation of live cattle, we need to set down a time for discussion, because this is already another year. All right, we have a list of items for discussion, and it's on the list, and we'll try to deal with them as soon as possible. What I'm trying to say is, Madam Chair, this was originally scheduled towards the end of last year, but now the proposed timing for discussion is April to July 2014, in that quarter. So please tell Secretary. Item 4 of the agenda, outline of research study on liquor licensing system in selected places. We're going to discuss the Liquor Licensing Board of Hong Kong in April this year, and last time we agreed that we would invite the research office to help us find more information in relation to other jurisdictions. And the Secretariat has prepared a research outline. So members, please read through that outline and express your comments to us as soon as possible, because the research office will submit their report in the middle of March. And I have received some comments from members, including Mr. Tommy Zhang, on the proposed research outline. Now, there are jurisdictions without any liquor licensing regimes, and he thinks we should also look into that. So his comment will be referred to the research office, in particular Japan and Taiwan. We discussed with the research office, and the problem with Japan is that they may not have English version available for all the documentation. So the report may not be ready in mid-March. And for Taiwan, we will look into that, and they hope that the report can be ready by the middle of March. Any views, Mr. Wong Kok Heng? Can I say a few words on this issue? Yes, please be brief. Madam Chair, Hong Kong is a unique place. It's densely built up area, and many bars operate in very densely populated areas. I think this may not happen to all the countries set out in 3.1 of the paper. So I hope the research office will take note of this and see what can be done. In relation to bars operating on the upper floors, what should be done about it? Because we cannot just draw reference from the overseas experience. Okay, the uniqueness of the Hong Kong situation. Mr. Raymond Wong. Madam Chair, I support the relevant research. In the past, we very often heard about reports on the negative reports on the liquor licensing board, including the abuse of power by a chief police inspector, and in relation to the liquor licensing regime, there is a question from the public on its integrity and credibility. And last October, on the criteria in approving liquor license applications, the sector also expressed some views. So it's time for us to conduct a proper research and draw reference from overseas experience on the jurisdictions chosen. I don't have particular views. Now, our model is actually the second model, which is adopted in places like the UK, and there is a regulatory board or committee for regulating liquor licensing. So I hope to see some the research result today. We are not going to have a detailed discussion about LLB today. We are just finalizing the research outline for the research office to give us more information for discussion in April. Any other views, Dr. Priscilla Leung? I think on the issue of liquor licensing, now one of the major issues lies with owners' corporations, and there is a problem with deeds of mutual covenant. So maybe the LLB as well as the owners corporation or management committees should, or property management committees should refer more often to the DMCs, because I came across some cases which were quite outrageous. The liquor licensing board granted the license without checking the DMCs, which and eventually it was indeed a breach, and there was no follow-up, no inspection. And how can the resident safety be ensured, and will the LLB take that into account as well? All right, I think the research office have heard your comment. The general situation of Hong Kong should also be taken into account. We have raised some issues, including the point about integrity. So let's wait for the research office's result. Now, next item for discussion is about animals. We agreed that we will be receiving deputations today, so we're going to have longer meeting today. So I'll ask the staff to invite the deputations in first. Today we will talk about the Trap-Neuter-Return trial program for stray dogs and handling of animal cases. So let's invite the deputations in. The Secretariat has prepared a background brief on this topic for our reference. We're going to spend some time to discuss this issue until 4:50. So, members who would like to speak would please raise their hands. Mr. Raymond Wong, Ms. Claudia Mo.
All may
I welcome all the deputations today. The Secretariat has altogether received 28 replies from deputations which will be attending today's meeting. We have also received a written submission from a deputation which will not be attending today's meeting, and we also welcome members from the administration.
Deputation has talked to us about the arrangement. Maybe the Secretariat knows that this deputation cannot come today. When the Secretariat approached them, the fax was used. Deputation said that he did not turn on the fax, but it has been using email. So the deputation said that the Secretariat has not phoned them. Dr. Kwok, we are aware of this. The Secretariat has approached the deputation. That's number 28. They are coming. First, I remind you, you have a earpiece and there's a mic. One is the floor.
The 好啦，1號頻道係廣東話版本，2號係英文嚇，0號咧。
0 is the floor, and if you need the interpretation, please use that earpiece. Now, I remind you that when you speak, you do not enjoy the protection of the Electoral Power and Privileges Ordinance, and that goes also for your written submissions. And later, please speak in order. If you have written submission that has not been submitted to the Secretariat, please do so, and we will circulate them to all members. Now, the documents have been prepared, and now we ask Professor Sophia Chen, Under Secretary for Food and Health, to take us through the document, and then we listen to the deputations and then the members. First, I'd like to thank the chairperson for giving me the opportunity to brief you on the Trap-Neuter-Return trial program for stray dogs, the latest progress, and the handling of animal cruelty cases. Of course, I'm very glad to see so many deputations here today who will supply their views to us. We have submitted a paper, and I will highlight a couple of points. First, concerning the TNR trial program. Now, in 2012, in May, the government has secured the agreement of this panel, and the FCD has worked with the animal concern groups to identify the sites and to gain the support of the districts. Now, some of the residents did not support them, however, and recently the trial program has recently secured support in respect of Yuen Long Tai Tong Shan Road and 2 sites in Cheung Chau, and we're going ahead with the legal procedures in order to take forward the trial program ASAP. Now, concerning the handling of animal cruelty cases, now the criminal investigation team has been professionally trained. When they find out that there is a rise in the number of cases in a particular area, the police will consider sending in a dedicated team to investigate in order that action can be taken quickly. Now, these measures will allow the police to deploy their limited resources effectively. Now, and also in 2012, the FCD has established a interdepartmental team to provide mutual support on these cases. And that year, the police also has introduced a animal watch scheme, and the FCD has also launched education and publicity for the public, and so we think this multi-pronged approach will be effective. And now I will let the members and deputations take the floor. We have many deputations today. In order to leave a little time for question and answer, please limit your speech to 3 minutes. Your speech will be timed. If you cannot finish, there will be written submission.
Per person, OK？ 好啦，咁啊，首先呢就係請
First, from SPCA, Mr. Sandy McAllister.
The Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals believes that Trap, Neuter, Vaccinate and Return offers humane dog population management strategy for stray dogs in Hong Kong. And by stray, we refer to animals which do not have owners or keepers. We must have a mechanism whereby TNR can be carried out legally and effectively, where the welfare of dogs is the priority and where public health and safety is safeguarded. Despite the very long time it has taken to reach this point, we recognise the importance and the role that a trial can play, so we remain committed to our trial scheme for several reasons: to gain public confidence, to ensure legality, a scientific trial that can produce proven results, and a practical model on which can be developed, as we have done with the Cat Colony Care Program. We urge government to recognise the urgency of making a policy decision so these trials can commence. The government should, at the earliest opportunity, apply TNVR targeting stray dogs more broadly, even before the completion of the initial trial site programs, which are currently 3 years away. This should involve government departments responsible for dog management and NGOs working in this field. We urge government to recognise, encourage and partake in wide-scale desexing of the loosely owned village, industrial, construction site dogs, etc., that is now being undertaken by the NGOs. These desexing programs can run at the same time as the TNR trial and should not be dependent on the outcomes of the TNR trial. Regarding the handling of animal cases, SPCA recognises the community's growing concern for animal welfare and the prevention of cruelty to animals. This is to be encouraged. For the investigation and prosecution of cruelty, Hong Kong's present system, which has evolved to fit Hong Kong's situation, and I stress that all cities have a slightly different system to suit their own environment and culture, is effective and is as good as or even better than other successful systems in the world. It is important that natural animal death or injury must not be confused with cruelty, and that the assessment of any system should be made on substantiated facts. However, it is not more investigation or more punitive powers that Hong Kong requires to prevent cruelty, it is law change. Our current CAP 169 requires urgent reform to include a duty of care and a law which protects animals and empowers those tasked with enforcement to remove animals from harm. Rather than punishing the cruelty, we would like to see laws that prevent it. And SPCA believes that this is where legislators' attention should be focused at this stage.
Okay, thank you. 嚇，咁我哋盡量每位朋友咧都係3。
Try to limit yourselves to 3 minutes each, please. Next, Mr. Roy Kwong, Yuen Long District Council Member. Now, whether a city is moving forward, it can be told from the way it handles animals. Now, I think the people's wish is very clear. Now, there is a killing of a stray cat a couple of years ago, and the public organized an action team, and in 1 week they got over 35,000 signatures. They requested animal police to be set up, and they asked for serious punitive action. But the police response has been very disappointing. I believe many members of the police are warm-hearted towards the police. They want to detect the cases. However, the police chief said that there is insufficient manpower, so they are not going to establish animal police. So it's a matter of whether one should or should not. Now, the animals cannot speak, they do not have votes, but we have the responsibility to defend these silent life forms. Now, I don't know why we read in the newspapers that there are more and more serious cases of animal cruelty and murder. Now, I was on the streets in the signature movement. A member of the public came and challenged us. Why do you think there should be animal police? I told him I'm also a member of the police. Now that person, in fact, is a member of the police, and he said that he would offer himself to join that team if it's set up. Now, you should have a department to collect evidence, now to prosecute, and this will give a clear and strong message for those shady people to tell them that they should no longer bully these little animals. Things are getting worse and worse. In July 2013, Lei Mok Shu, October, Tin Shui, October 19th, Yuen Long. Now, how mobile are your team members? Do you go to individual districts? We want going to the root of the problem. We want the people's voice to be heard, which their voices are clear. 1, set up an animal police team and increase the punishment. And also, I tell those who are hiding now, you will your souls have been contaminated. Next, Animal Lifeguard Action Group, Ms. Ho Loy. We have 5 points to make. First, we support very much the FCD launching the TNR scheme over Hong Kong, and we hope this pilot scheme can be implemented quickly. We support the other groups in favor of this program. They are all offering pragmatic views. Now, the FCD should consider these points. Now, right now, 4 days after the animals are taken back to AFCD, they will be euthanized, they will be killed. This should be extended to 14 days instead of 4 days. This will reduce. Now, the animal owners are ignorant of these procedures. They go to the police or they look for dogs, or they might be out of Hong Kong, and the AFCD in that cases might have killed the animals before, in fact, the owners can approach them. So, secondly, the administration is trying to lobby the districts. They should send someone who have frontline experience to do the explanation. I sat through several meetings at a DC, and very often these are veterinarians at animal safety centers, or who are desk officers. So they are not that good at lobbying, and so the administration give people at the districts the impression that you are very vague and inexperienced. So at the next round of consultation, the administration should send someone who is more knowledgeable, or they can educate your frontline staff more. Also, the administration hopes to replace the existing operations in 2 years. Now, the SPC, even the SPCA is using these animal ropes that you should use some more methods that and your staff should be educated on animal psychology, so that animals are caught without being scared.
Thank you, Ms. Ho. Please limit yourselves to 3 minutes. If you have something else to say, you can provide us with your written submission. Next, from Civic Party, Ms. Bonnie Leung. Have we missed one? Oh, I'm sorry. It should be number 4 first. I missed that one. It should be 9 times 9 Sky Fong Dogs, Miss Xie Xiaoyang. Thank you. I'm Xie Xiaoyang from 9 times 9 Sky Fong Dogs. Chong Hiu-yang is a famous writer. Now, our organization has been set up for 4 years. Today, we'd like to emphasize 2 points. First, on stray animals or stray dogs, we'd like to point out that this is a result of human act, because in French or in Latin, there is not even the word stray dog. They only call it sick dogs or abandoned dogs. That's because when people find their dogs old and frail, they just abandon them in the streets. So it's a result of human acts. So 4 years ago, the 9x9 Gaifeng dogs was set up, and we examined whether we as dog owners should be responsible for the acts of irresponsible owners in our city. And over the years, we have helped to neuter and implement TNR on over 100 stray dogs. However, this should have been done by the government instead of the community, because community organizations have limited resources. And I understand that a madam of a dog farm is also attending today, and I understand there are many cases in different districts that takes up responsibility that should have been taken up by the government instead in handling stray dogs. And these people, these volunteers, feel that they should take up this responsibility, and they spent their energy and money on taking care of stray animals. The existing AFCD's policy on stray animal should evolve with the changing values of urban dwellers. So we have the following comments. First of all, we ask the AFCD to stop the policy of euthanizing unadopted animals without 4 days after they've been caught. Secondly, the AFCD should take up the coordination role so that TNVR trial program can be implemented in all 18 districts, because the animals do travel across districts. And thirdly, those abandoning their animals should be punished heavily. Otherwise, the program will not be able to succeed. Next, Ms. Bonnie Leung from Civic Party. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Civic Party has all along been working with animal welfare groups in advocating the TNVR program. We have an animal welfare concern group under our party, and the advocating TNVR is our major objective. In fact, 2 years ago, the Civic Party already proposed that the funding for putting down animals should be taken away. And at that time, we said that the TNVR should be rolled out in 2012-13, and that should be an animal rehoming center for people to adopt pets, so as to encourage adoption of pets. 2 years ago, we made this suggestion because we thought that the government could implement TNVR as soon as possible and could have the rehoming center ready as soon as possible. And yet, 2 years down the road, the program has yet to begin, and we are very disappointed after reading the administration's paper because of their slow progress. We think the administration should start from scratch, but in fact, we think the government is starting from scratch, but in fact they don't need to do that. They have already consulted some district councils. Half of the district councils supported the TNR trial program. Some objected, and so consultation has been done. And there are also volunteers in the community, and they are very committed. They received some funding from voluntary organizations and introduced TNR programs themselves, and even the community welcomed their program because it has been a success. So we have volunteers who are committed and experienced in animal welfare, and the government should incorporate them into the government's program to expedite the progress. So, in fact, the concern group earlier on conducted a survey, and out of 1,593 respondents, 70% of them agreed very much that the public funds used to put down stray dogs and cats should be used for rehoming or vaccination or neutering. And we think that the rehoming center should be opened as soon as possible, because 4 days after stray animals have been caught, they been put into AMC of AFCD, they would be put down. All right, thank you. Next, Ms. Doris Wong from Hong Kong Scottish Fold Sickness Concern Group. Thank you, Madam Chair. Our group supports all along the TNR program instead of putting down animals, and we hope the TNR trial program can be implemented as soon as possible, and there should also be vaccination against rabies for stray dogs at the same time, so as to safeguard the health of people as well as dogs. And we also have some comments in relation to the handling of animal cases. We understand that on receipt of complaints, the AFCD will land traps and cages for people to trap cats. But are the complaints on nuisance substantiated? We hope that before giving out traps, the AFCD can confirm such complaints and see if they're substantiated before landing out cages, and they have to designate the locations as well. And on this point, there is also another problem. Very often, the CCCP cats would be caught by the AFCD, and CCCP means that cats that have undergone neutering, that have their ears clipped for identification. And during the detention, the cats would be subject to great fear, and it would also be a waste of resources. We'd like the AFCD to review their policy. If it's a CCCP cat that the AFCD has caught, it should be released as soon as possible without calling up the voluntary workers. And also, after catching stray cats and dogs, and also cats and dogs that have attacked people, sometimes they have owners, and yet they would be taken back to the animal management center and so-called at the animal prison by us. Very often we find that these animals are ill taken care of, and there are animals that have been infected with diseases. And last month there was an animal that attacked an owner. It's an owned cat. It attacked someone, and in the end, after it was placed in the AMC, it died. And according to the AFCD's information, during those times the weather was very cold, and the cat was placed in an open area within the cage without any cover, and it was suspected that the cat froze to death. I hope the AFCD could pay attention to these issues. Next, from Animal Friends, Ms. Jessie Ng. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Jessie Ng. I'm from Animal Friends. On the Trap-Neuter-Return trial scheme, our response is that it has been a long-waited program, and still we are waiting. And last May, as we heard, 2 sites have been approved, and yet we still need to wait further for the actual implementation of the TMR scheme. We hope the department can note this point when they try to lobby support from the community. They should pay attention to the sensitive words like stray and release, because these words are easily objected to by local communities. But actually, these so-called stray dogs are loosely owned dogs as guard dogs in the new territories. Instead, they are not regarded as pets, but they are owned. So in the AFCD's views, these are stray dogs which on being caught will be euthanized if not adopted by owners. But normally these loosely owned dogs will not be taken back by their owners because the owners are afraid of paying fines, etc. They may get they may have other channels in getting more dogs, or they will just allow the dogs that they keep to breed more dogs as guard dogs. Normally, these dogs are not desexed and they may continue to give birth. These dog owners usually lack the sense of neutering or they do not have the means to neuter their dogs, and the puppies may be discarded or they might be caught by AFCD, and this vicious circle just continues. I hope that more can be done through the TNR trial scheme so that these dogs won't become stray dogs. We helped in 2013, 1,300 dogs. We desexed these animals, and we are just a very small organization with limited resources, and yet we are able to do that. We hope that at the policy level, more can be done to help neuter these dogs, because definitely the dog population can be reduced, and this will be in the interest of the public. Next, Ms. Nga Yin Shan from the Conservation of Earth and Animal Association. Thank you. The government has more resources comparing to community organizations in introducing this scheme, so the government should take the lead in introducing the TNR scheme so that it can lead by example and educate the public that we mustn't resolve the problem by putting all the animals down. In the long run, TNR can respect lives and also control stray dog population. Thank you. Next, Happy Animals, Ms. Carmen Chan. Thank you. Now, the Happy Animals support the TNR trial scheme, and we also agree with other deputations. And with the 9 times 9, it's not 969, it's a 9 times 9. To respond to that, I'd like to supplement one point. Now, we have so-called community dogs and stray dogs. So we just consider all such dogs abandoned. But in fact, that's not the case. As Jessie mentioned, some are loosely owned dogs. And there are dogs in Hong Kong anyway, and we think the AFCD should provide some space for dogs to live in Hong Kong, just like how they treat pigs and monkeys. And we also agreed that vaccination is necessary to guard against rabies. And the AFCD is actually avoiding the real fact, because according to the WHO's recommendation, prevention of rabies or rabies control should be introduced through a major vaccination program. This is the WHO's recommendation.
Now, even in this paper, it said that they want to prevent rabies. Now, they shouldn't just kill the animals. They should vaccinate the dogs. Well, they're already doing it in Bali. In several years, they vaccinated over 200,000 dogs. That's over 70% of the population, because there were several rabies fatalities cases. We shouldn't wait for that to happen before we launch a large-scale vaccination program. The AFCD should vaccinate all these community dogs or privately kept dogs. Now, on the TNVR, we support that. We think the AFCD should do that. This is a humane approach. Now, some people do not want it. Well, we are disappointed with the existing approach. Now, they work in a black box. How come they select these groups? We don't know. They should determine some criteria so that certain groups can apply. Now, they have a pilot program, 30 dogs. Now, they have the other organization has 30 staff and looking over 1,000 dogs. 30 dogs, that's a joke. The government should take the lead in a large-scale dog vaccination program. Next, Ms. Idaho of Churchill Animal Care. Now, ever since the start of this program, I and Michael have been following up. Fortunately, last March, Churchill was selected as a pilot site. We are very happy, but as of now, there has been no concrete action. Now, we hope the space can be accelerated. We certainly understand that different groups have different views about the program. Most are supportive, but a small minority are against it. Now, the longer this drags on, the more likely the scheme may be affected. Our organization is small with few resources, but we try to do our part. We try to do TNR. We don't just release it. We rehome the dog, the friendly dogs. We desex them and we arrange for rehoming. Of course, we have a lot of difficulty. We hope the government should step up the pace to work with in line with our own goals. We, of course, in Churchill, hope the government could launch the TNR as quickly as possible. We hope that there shouldn't be too many consultations and studies like the scheme for cats that has already been very fruitful. It's very visible. I don't know why you have this delay. Of course, dogs are bigger than cats and they have different living habits. But of course, you can learn from the cat program too. The government should appreciate our difficulty and it should deploy more resources to help these local groups. Next, Mr. Michael Toon of Hong Kong Society of Herpetology. Now, I'd like to supplement on the Churchill TNR situation. Now, many are supportive of the TNR program. In March last year, they came to the district council and it was approved. I look forward to the TNR program being implemented. Now, on 14th of June, 2011, there was a LegCo program, LegCo paper that says the FCD will employ an independent consultant to review the success or otherwise of the TNR program. So if we implement the program, then in 3 years we'll have a consultant report. So we hope there won't be any more delay for the Churchill TNR program. The speaker just mentioned that there were different voices. Many are supportive. A small number of residents are still not clear about the program, so there should be more publicity and education on the benefits of TNR for the local people. Now, if the TNVR program is implemented quickly, then the humanely destroyed animals should decrease in number because we see this figure, the number fell from 6,000 in the year 1,000 in 2006. There has been a substantial decrease in the number, so the rehoming should be done more extensively. Now, if TNVR is successful, the number of animals put to sleep would certainly decrease in number. Next, Happy 99, Mr. Jeremy Tam. Happy 99 or Dog has been established for over 4 years. I'm one of the founding members. Our membership is only 100 or so. In the past 4 years, we helped dogs to be neutered and rehomed. We helped over hundreds of dogs. Even a small group like us can help so many dogs. The AFCD should be shamed, and it should learn from our experience. Now, we have heard these terms for several years. Why is it that we have only heard the talk but not seen the action? Because there have been consultation after consultation. There was consultation of the DCs in 2011. I heard that. Now, however, the district councils entered a new term, and then the government launched another consultation. So why is it that the government has this unique approach for TNVR? It keeps having consultation after consultation, unlike for other schemes. Now, because it's difficult, is it that you don't do it just because it's difficult? A lot of local people are against it. So you have this consultation document. You said that you decreased the number of humanely destroyed animals to 5,600. Now, that's what you said in your paper. You seem to be complacent, but it's a figure that we cannot accept, that over 5,000 dogs are euthanized every year. Now, what you should try to strike a blow at is the group of inhumane dog owners who abandon the dogs. Now, we even put up the money to save the dogs caught by AFCD. When the AFCD find dogs who don't have tags on them, they will destroy them after 4 days. Now, when we want to try to get the dogs out to rehome them, we cannot do it. We may work through the several charitable groups, but they will not help us do it, because they have to ensure that the person who take the dogs will indeed keep them. We are volunteers. We can only claim that we are the persons who want to claim the dogs, and then we find somebody to own them. So we have to pay the cost for that. Now, have you punished the people who abandoned the dogs? Are you going to increase the punishment? Next, Miss Amanda Whitford, Associate Professor, Department of Professional Legal Education of the University of Hong Kong.
Recognized as the only humane way to control stray dog populations. It's supported by the OIE, WHO, and all credible international bodies responsible for animal health and welfare. It's been successfully utilised already in Australia, the USA, Europe, Africa, and parts of Asia. Unfortunately, it's been very slow to come to Hong Kong, and we should act quickly now to roll it out across the territory, not necessarily waiting the 3 years for the trials to complete before implementing it more widely. It is also vital that any assessment of the program relies on the reduction of a number of puppies produced, not on a reduction in nuisance complaints. And it will take some time for the adult population to reduce by natural attrition, and that must be taken into account as well. In regard to animal handling cases, CAP 169 represents a Victorian attitude to animals. It is based on a UK law from 1911, which we have inherited. It focuses only on cruelty. It makes no requirement for good welfare. Compared to overseas legislation, Hong Kong is now very much out of date. In Australia, the UK, the USA, New Zealand and Taiwan, there is now a law that requires a duty of care to be placed on those who keep animals, and that duty should become a central focus in Hong Kong in a new animal welfare law which will replace CAP 169. The public call for animal police is sincere but misguided. It assumes that animal police will be able to do what the SPCA, the police and the AFCD currently cannot, and that is just not correct. With the same law, the same problems will continue. We need to change the tools, not the people wielding them. While CAP 169 remains in its current form, owners will still be able to keep animals in neglectful conditions no matter who is policing the law. What Hong Kong needs is an animal welfare law, as recommended in 2010 by Hong Kong University SPCA Joint Review of Legislation. It's time for us to recognise that modern laws don't just prosecute cruelty, they actively prevent it. Legislators need to abandon the idea of animal police, which is simply a plaster on an open wound, and address the real problem, which is the legislation is now out of date. We need an animal welfare ordinance for Hong Kong, not an amendment to CAP 169 or a change in those who implement it. We need a strict duty of care, a strict liability imposed on all those who keep animals, as is already in place in comparable jurisdictions. It's time for Hong Kong to step up to the plate.
Okay, thank you. 好，咁跟住請動物地球黃繼仁。
Next, Mr. David Wong of Animal Earth. Thank you, Chairman. Now, well, actually, the government is taking a little bit of action. Now, the government is taking the steps for the TNR program. We hope it will be successful. Now, I read the government progress report. In paragraph 2, it says that the objective is to make sure that animals can live harmoniously with men. However, in paragraph 8, it says that TNR is for the sake of providing active response to the aspirations, so it helps the groups concerned. Now, if the government really wants to maintain harmony between animals and humans, it should say that the government, in order to protect the rights of men and animals, and that's why it launches the TNR. Now, apart from animal rights, I think the TNR is very important for the health of people in the community. Carmen mentioned that now Hong Kong citizens and officials have forgotten about rabies, it seems. Although we haven't had rabies in 27 years, Hong Kong is so close to China, mainland China, that we must remember rabies is will kill in 99.999% of the cases. Now, in case there is one case of rabies transmission, what action will you take? You officials, will you kill every stray dog in sight, as they do on the mainland? The WHO proposes that all stray dogs, whether they are owned or not, all dogs, whether they are owned or not, should be vaccinated for rabies in a mandatory manner. Now, we are not talking only about animal welfare. It involves human life, a real danger that can erupt. Now,
as in the case of avian flu, etc., we seem to have forgotten about rabies. Next, about Animal Watch program and the handling of animal cruelty cases. Recently, we saw a case in which the police, after the report has been made, allowed the suspect to remove some evidence. I won't go into details because we have already filed a complaint against the CCPI. I hope that the I hope members would check the progress of the Animal Watch program. Next, from Liberal Party, Mr. Victor Ng. Every life should be respected. It should be cherished. Even if it's a dog, we should not deprive it of the right to live. The Liberal Party is in support of this TNR trial program, because not only can it control the expansion of stray dogs population, it can also avoid the stray dogs being killed. And some groups say that nuisance might be caused if these dogs are released. I hope more resources can be allocated to lobby the support of local communities. Recently, we have seen cruelty of against dogs cases, and I hope that as far as the law is concerned, heavy punishment can be imposed, and publicity should be strengthened to avoid people abandoning their pets. It's a lifelong promise. They should think carefully. The administration may have a lot of worries. Each of the 18 districts may be different, with different demographics, that the district council's views should be consulted. I understand their difficulties, but if the government is really determined to proceed, this will be a success. Most importantly, you should really do something about the views heard. Lives are important. I also have kept dogs. I helped some dogs give birth. And when I was young, I didn't have the means. But anyway, in the future, I hope that the groups and the government can all work together to protect small animals. Every year, tens of thousands of animals are euthanized, and their spirits are everywhere. So I hope the administration can heed the views of all our groups, and the Liberal Party every week organize activities. They visit different organizations, and we understand that the government should do more to help these organizations in terms of funding, etc., so that they can do more. Next, Ms. Elaine Seal from Stop Save Hong Kong's Cats and Dogs. Thank you. Madam Chair, I'm Elaine from Stop Save Hong Kong's Cats and Dogs. About the TNR in program, I think we all agree that it's a long-awaited trial program. We'd like to see it happen, but the concern may be that whether the administration would just stop at the trial program. First of all, we don't know when it will actually be implemented. We look forward to a timetable. And secondly, about the 3 sites covered in the trial program, it's actually of a very small scale. We hope that the trial program would lead to something on its completion. It should be expanded to cover other areas in Hong Kong so that you can see the full result of the trial. And many organizations have successfully implemented on a larger scale the TNVR program. And Dr. Tini Ho in a moment will say more about it. The government should at least not get in the way of the volunteers' work on TNR, let alone giving more help. The intention of the law is that if you take an animal to have it desexed, you should not be responsible for or it doesn't mean that you are responsible for that pet or you are the owner. I believe Professor Whitford has already written a paper on this legal point. I hope that the administration can heed this view, and there is also an exemption notice necessary according to the department's requirement, and if so, this exemption should be extended to voluntary organizations responsible for TMR schemes. Lastly, about animal cruelty, On individual cases, we have heard a lot of views on how they should be handled. But at a macro level, I'd like to talk about 139B. 139B seeks to address major negligence or cruelty against animals. That is, the so-called commercial breeders who at present are not required to obtain any license. And all the animal welfare groups agree that there should be legislation as soon as possible. Thank you. Next, ELA East Asia, Dr. John Wedderburn.
I am Dr. John Wedderburn, a 40-year resident of Hong Kong, and I'm speaking on behalf of IELA. First, a word on animal cruelty. AFCD has had many recommendations put before them over the years. I recall in particular this panel discussing animal cruelty in 2006 and 2008. Unfortunately, AFCD has chosen to dicker about with minor amendments instead of proposing the comprehensive new legislation recommended by their own committees. The 2010 review of animal welfare legislation by Professor Whitford and Dr. Woodhouse has been ignored. It is time for action. Now, trap, neuter, and return. For more than 15 years, I have, in various capacities, been trying to persuade AFCD of the merits of desexing in general and TNR in particular. The demerits of catch and kill and the merits of catch and return have always been very clear to me, but seem to be beyond the understanding of our government animal control department. The detailed arguments have been clearly laid out to AFCD hundreds of times over the years, and again today. I just wish to say that killing only works very short term, whereas desexing is an effective long-term solution. If only AFCD would convert their killing houses, animal management centres, into desexing clinics, Hong Kong's dog and cat problems could be solved permanently and within a very few years, and much money saved. Today, however, we are not asking for AFCD to do this. It is obvious that they do not have the mental capacity to grasp the logic. Instead, all we are asking for is for AFCD to get out of the way, to stop obstructing the organizations that are willing to do the work for them. They must cease their vindictive and senseless prosecutions of TNR volunteers. The proposed TNR trials are a stupid waste of time. They are so hedged around with conditions that they will never prove anything. And there is no need to prove anything. It has all been proved before, for dogs in many overseas countries, for cats even in Hong Kong itself. Let's get on with TNR.
Okay, thank you. 跟住我哋
Next, from Protection of Animals, Lantau South, Ms. Louise Charles.
I'm Louise from Protection of Animals, Lantau South. PALS would like to state clearly that, without a very fundamental and far-reaching change in the mindset of the administrative officials tasked with the authority to deal with animal welfare issues in Hong Kong, a TNR program could well prove too little too late. On Lantau Island, there is so much that could and indeed should be done to control and or eradicate indiscriminate breeding among the island's dog population and improve the mechanism which is currently in place to prevent both animal abuse and abandonment. Many claims are advanced from the AFCD as to the varied and extensive initiatives being undertaken to improve the overall animal management and welfare situation throughout Hong Kong. But unfortunately, PALS has yet to experience any of these and is unaware of any changes in either the AFCD's policies, procedures or practices over the last 2 decades. It's true that there is legislation presently in place which, if applied in a strong and diligent manner, would make something of a difference were it not for the fact that the current fines for abuse of animals handed down by our magistrates are incredibly low and imprisonment a rarity with very short prison sentences. Any multi-pronged approach in the field of animal management and welfare must comprise a dedicated and proactive program of change, from passive acceptance to aggressive determination to really bring about a positive improvement. And this must go well beyond the scope of the TNR scheme itself to include close to include close scrutiny of pet shops, commercial and hobby breeders who should be licensed with a cap on breeder numbers and the numbers of litters born. And finally, the emphasis should be put firmly on the source of stray dogs and the prevention of unwanted litters of puppies from construction sites, building and storage yards, and island and new territory villages who have an entrenched aversion to the sterilization of their loosely owned packs. PALS believes that both money and manpower should be made available, as with TNR, to render all the talk that has gone on for far too many years academic, and that the time to take concrete action is now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Angela Scott.
Thank you. As a member of the public, I have taken great interest over the past 10 years regarding animal issues in Hong Kong. After reading all the detailed submissions and reflecting on the many AFCD public consultations I've attended over the years, I would like to make the following comments in response to TNR and animal cruelty. First, I would like to give a very big heartfelt thank you to all the NGO animal groups who have been working so hard for so long in Hong Kong towards saving the lives of animals in need. Your hands-on efforts have been greatly felt and appreciated in the community. The problem of stray dogs is not exclusive to Hong Kong, nor is it a new problem. It is a problem that every country faces worldwide. But what sets countries apart is how they deal with it, or should I say, how they embrace the challenge. The challenge here in Hong Kong isn't the animals themselves, but the very government that claims to attach great importance to animal welfare. And I now quote from their statement issued to LegCo dated January 2014. The government attaches great importance to animal welfare and management. Our policy objective is to ensure that animals and people coexist in a harmonious way. End of quote. Yet the Hong Kong government still has not taken the very much needed steps forward to making their statement a reality in Hong Kong. We know many countries have implemented TNR as an alternative to the outdated methods of catch and kill, which is practiced by the Hong Kong government today. Catch and kill has been proven to be ineffective in controlling the stray population. This method has no place in our modern society, especially when there is a humane alternative program such as TNR. I urge and implore the government to take those very much needed and overdue steps forward into making TNR a reality in Hong Kong. This would give Hong Kong's stray dogs a future and a place in this community. Regarding the topic of cruelty, animal cruelty, I can only echo what has already been said many times to the Hong Kong government, and that is, there still isn't any real protection for animals under the present animal laws. The animal laws we do have are outdated, and major important sections are missing. We lag behind many other countries in this regard. Recently in Hong Kong, a judge in sentencing an animal abuse offender stated in court if he could hand down a life ban to ensure this person would never be able to own a pet again, he would do so. But the fact is, he concluded there is no such law at present in Hong Kong. Thank you.
Thank you. 跟住請TNR
Next, TNR Fund HK, Dr. Tinny Ho.
So that I care about both animal welfare and human welfare. I founded TNR Fund Hong Kong about 1 year and a half ago, and since then the fund has dissected over 800 dogs already. As a doctor, I believe in science, and so does AFCD. So that's why when TNR was first proposed more than 10 years ago by animal welfare organizations to the government, AFCD was not sure, because there was not enough scientific data then to support TNR in dogs. So later on, we have the TNR trial programs proposed. However, we have seen a lot of obstacles implementing this trial program. So even until now, the trial has not actually started. But I wish to point out that in the past few years of waiting, things have changed. There have been a lot more scientific data that have been published. to prove that TNR works, in, not only in terms of controlling dog population, but also for improving public health. And I have included these references in my written submission. Now, these overseas studies are much, much larger scale than the one we have planned in Hong Kong. So with all these newly available data that prove TNR works, do we really still need to spend $5.8 million to carry out our own small-scale trial? More importantly, we should not waste a few more years waiting for trial results before adopting TNR as a public policy, now that it has proven to work. The puppies are born on the streets every day, and we really cannot afford to wait. With this, I urge the government to consider, in parallel to the present strategy of removing nuisance dogs, to adopt TNR as an official public policy now and implement it territory-wide, not just in selected sites, not just within special programs, but all throughout Hong Kong, so that we can control the stray dog population as quickly as possible. And while we are waiting for the government to adopt TNR as a policy, as a public policy, we hope the government can provide support to volunteers who are carrying out TNR at the moment, and confirm that just by taking out the dog out from the street for a few days for desexing does not make the volunteer a legal owner. And returning the dog to its original site does not mean abandonment. Lastly, we would also like to ask AFCD to help us, as now volunteers cannot vaccinate the dogs against rabies at the time of desexing without microchipping. And we all care about the health of Hong Kong. Thank you.
Okay. 好，跟住請動物友善政策關注小組嘅卓志超先生。
Animal Friendly License Alliance of Mr. Kevin Chuck. Now, on this issue, in the past, I have add my views to senior AFCD officials, whether in this chamber or in protest on the street. Now, maybe I have to wait till my hair gets white. Now, the administration could not implement our suggestion. They say that the administration feels that there is not yet evidence in any country of the world proving that TNR is successful. Maybe they just didn't come across such data. So they say they cannot use public money to publicize. Just publicize, not even publicize, not to say implement the TNR program, even on a small scale. Now, in some countries, if you publicize such data, then you might be jailed. So such data was not published. So that's not the basis not to implement the program. We waited so many years. In fact, TNR is being done in private in many parts of Hong Kong, in some parts of Hong Kong. There is a very important point in TNR, that's neuter. If the government can provide a free neutering scheme, that can be an independent scheme so that the volunteers can save a lot of money, and if they can promote the neutering concept to the public, and if people are aware that the government can provide free neutering, then the residents, how do I put it, their awareness of the scheme will be that much stronger because it's free. Now, if they have to pay several hundreds of dollars to desex the dogs of their village, maybe it's very difficult for them. I'd like to ask one more question. Now, all along the administration, when they handle the complaints about so-called nuisance from dogs, on what basis do they catch the dog? and establish that the dog is the subject of the complaint. Next, Dr. Tom Mangan of Hong Kong Veterinary Association.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, the Hong Kong Vet Association is in favour of the TNR trial. Public sentiment is moving away from the trap and kill programs, and we believe that there's increased public support for TNR. Without public support, these schemes will not be successful. It has been shown in some studies that TNR does decrease stray populations. 40% neuter rate can result in a stable population of animals. It does decrease the spread of disease by decreasing the movement of dogs. In a trap and kill situation, you create a vacuum and dogs from other areas of Hong Kong would move into that, hence spreading disease. It has also been shown to decrease dog bite cases, which have been found to peak at around 10 weeks post-whelping. By increasing the number of sterile dogs in the population, you will decrease those natural tendencies and aggressions. The HKVA supports the trial, but stresses that there is a need for government control and coordination. There is a need for surveys and studies to monitor the program and to allow for fine-tuning and problem-solving as the trials progress. Probably one of the most important things which can be done now is there's a definite need for an education scheme in schools teaching responsible pet ownership so that we can actually try to stop the problem before it starts. We believe to increase the efficiency of handling welfare cases, we should look at empowering SPCA inspectors further, include other health workers such as social workers and psychiatrists to deal with some of the underlying health problems which may be leading to the development of some of these welfare issues. Thank you.
跟住我哋請平姐貓狗場嘅孔雲平女士。
Miss Hong Wen Ping of Heng Che Animal Pounds. I am Ping Che. Fortunate, I'm not very eloquent and I have a sore throat. Now, I am very supportive of DNR. I have done that for several thousands of animals. It's not just in the past few years. I've done it for over 40 years for stray dogs. Previously, I had the money, so I could take them to private vets. So I helped many. I'm now older, but I still help these little puppies. Now, it's very sad. They are foraging for food in the rubbish dumps or on the hillside because the government doesn't help them. So they are born all over the place, and then we have to look all over the place for them to pick them up from all parts of. Now, I hope they can be neutered first and then released. Don't just euthanize them. This is my wish and also the wish of the public, I believe. Thank you. Thank you, Ping Chair. Next, Young Civics, Mr. Peter Yu. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Civic Party all along has striven for the TNVR program to replace the inhumane euthanization program. Our party has had a firm stand on this. Now, SPCA since 2000 has launched the CCP for cats. That's the equivalent for the cats corresponding to TNR for dogs. Now, many groups like us believe that the program should be extended to dogs. However, the TNR for dogs has not been implemented yet. Now, we call ourselves a metropolis. Now, however, we lag behind many other countries when it comes to animal care policies. Now, looking at current policies, the government doesn't encourage the public to care for stray animals. It regards their existence as illegal. And when the AFCD receive a phone call, they go to catch these stray animals right away. They do not look into the motive of the complainant or whether the act is reasonable. Now, when members of the public see stray animals, they feel that their rights are being infringed, they are being disturbed. So that is not the basis for good policy. There should be increased publicity and education to change people's concepts about stray animals. Deputations just pointed out that the word stray is not the right word. The government should start from small actions. The stray animals should be termed community animals so that the people can look at the abandoned animals in a more civilized way. Next, Ms. Chang Kam Shan. I represent our Lion Rock Action Group. We were established in 2009. We help to neuter many animals. We try to help the community. TNVR is a community-based program. It's very important that before any kind of action, you should talk to the local people, tell them that they should rest assured that the number of animals will be controlled. So publicity and education is important. Before a program is launched, you should visit each district council member, provide them with the details about the TNVR program, understand their worries, undertake broad publicity and education in that area, distribute pamphlets, tell them that the animals can be controlled in number, and during the course of the program, we collect people's views regularly, and we had an interim survey. Over 80% of the public, of the residents, support the TNVR program. They agree that most of the animals are only on the mountainside. They are scared of animals, and they are scared of humans, and they are of very little threat. And in fact, the animals that are kept cause more nuisance than the stray animals. Now, we met with the Wong Tai Sin resident groups. We met with over all the 40 plus Wong Tai Sin District Council members. We won overwhelming support. Now it's all because there are a lot of Lion Rock volunteers. Every week they go up the Lion Rock to help the animals and take food to them.
They clean the place and they review the environmental hygiene condition, and they also have package of programs. We hold seminars, and we also have rehoming day on a regular basis. We successfully helped detect over 1,000 animals on Lion Rock, and we also helped rehomed over 100 animals. We hope TNVR can be introduced territory-wide as soon as possible. Next, non-profit making veterinary services society limited, Mr. Mark Mack. Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Over the past decade, the administration has been conducting consultations and resorting to catch and remove. And what have we heard just now? We heard volunteers who are committed, who have been doing something else, and were actually not defying the AFCD, but rather helping the government. And we have heard a lot of different stories throughout the past decade. And what are these stories about? These stories involves us going to work. We spend our energy and time and effort during weekends. And we beg the government to let us do charitable work, in fact. And Dr. Esther, Dr. Mary, well, they are also here today. And back then, 4 years ago, you gave us the opportunity to explain to you why we had to go up to the Lion Rock to do something in Chiuanshan. And that is, we would like to implement the TNVR program, which the government had yet to introduce back then. And the result was quite good. When we met with district councillors, most of them told us not to mess with that constituencies. And then 2 years later, when we met with them again, they said that we were angels of Wong Tai Sin. They said that the AFCD should not get in the way, and the TNVR should be implemented in Wong Tai Sin. And we talked about the details of our program. We're not trying to teach the AFCD how to do their work. And Jesse, Tinny, we have all the committed volunteers here, and they have some great stories to tell. We have done a lot, and what we have done is charity. What we have done is to avoid the government being criticized by the public again, because they have been very cruel by catching stray dogs and killing them. And that is stupid, and that is what we have done. Because this is a win-win situation. The government wins, the community wins, the animals win. This is the story we'd like to tell. So please continue with your trial scheme, and we will go on with our work. Our trial scheme, which is the brainchild of our work, we will continue with it so that the figures can drop by 20% per year, so that one day we live in a harmonious society with animals. Thank you, Mr. Mack. Next, Ms. Irene Lee. I'm a member of the NPV Action Group. About TNVR, Zui and Mark already covered the points. Now, let me tell you something about its effectiveness. We don't have many members. We introduced TNVR at a number of spots in Wong Tai Sin, and a few years later, we see at least 3 spots the stray dog population has actually been put under control. All the female dogs have been desexed, and all the more mature dogs are eventually phased out. Well, we don't know how to conduct scientific research, but what we see is that over the years, at those spots, we have been able to control stray dogs population. That's what I'd like to say. Thank you. Next, from Hong Kong Dog Rescue, Ms. Catherine Koh. Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of TNR is to control stray dog population, and we're in full support of the program. we think it's necessary to control stray dogs, but we need an effective way to do it. Without this method, all the dog rescue groups are of no use. So the TNR trial program has been discussed for some time, and so far 2 sites have been chosen. Only 2 sites. In fact, if there are dogs in the community and it's difficult to take them for neutering operation because the volunteers are not pet owners, so more sites should be chosen instead of frequent consultation and the lack of timetable. Can the government change the law so that even ordinary people can take dogs to have it desexed? For example, they can be taken to the AFCD for rabies vaccine and for microchips to be implanted. This can be done, in fact, not just by dog owners. In fact, the whole society is the dog's owners. And another method is, in order to have a harmonious society with animals around, even pet owners don't want to see their pets continue to breed. Can they take the initiative to implement TNR as well? Perhaps it can be run on a trial basis for 1 or 2 years so that the government can compare the statistics under the 2 different programs, catch and remove and TNR, so that you can see this is the most effective way in controlling stray dog population. All right, thank you, all the 28 deputations, for coming here and expressing your views, and we are very touched by the continuous effort that you have made, as we heard. And I think all the deputations agree with what the administration's paper mentioned. That is, we should ensure that animals and people coexist in a harmonious way. Although there are different views on how this can be achieved. So a response from the administration and the secretary, and then the floor will be open to members for questions. I'll read out their names: Ms. Claudia Mo, Mr. Raymond Wong, Ms. Alice Mack, myself, and Mr. Ray Chan, Mr. Alan Leung, and Mr. Albert Chan. Anyone else? And Deputy Chairman, Mr. Stephen Ho. So questions and answers included 4 minutes for each member. And the Secretary, 3 minutes for you to give a brief response, and then you can proceed to answer our questions. Thank you, deputations, for coming here to express your views to us and telling us your stories. Apart from coming, I'd also like to thank you and your organizations for your long-standing devotion and the energy and time and money you spend on animal welfare. And there are organizations which have conducted some local surveys, and these results have been shown to us, and the administration and the AFCD have heard you loud and clear. All the views and comments have been heard, and as part of our ongoing work, these views will be considered, and we would like to continue to listen to your views. Just now, many deputations have spoken on TNR trial program. They have spoken to support it, and many would like to see it implemented as soon as possible, and also to expand the coverage of the program. Now, the consultation for the trial program wasn't an easy task, but in the end we finalized the the program, and 2 sites have been chosen. This is the first step. Some time is needed for us to make assessment and collect data. So I would ask for your understanding. And indeed, this is the first step towards fully implementing the program. Adaptation mentioned animal police, and we have representatives from the police here. In 2011, the police introduced the Animal Watch program. They worked with the SPCA, AFCD, and other vet groups and concerned groups. And their team also comprise crime investigation team officers investigating into some cases, and if necessary they will deploy special teams to take a more focused investigation approach. And some deputations mention penalty and the current legislation. First of all, thank you for your views. And the existing legislation, CAP 169, Prevention of Cruelty Against Animal Ordinance, have tariff, and based on the facts of individual cases, different penalties may be imposed. Recently, a heavy penalty of 16 months imprisonment was given, and the DOJ could also appeal against the decision. All right, the floor will be open to questions. You can supplement. You can ask administration questions or ask the deputation to supplement. 4 minutes. First, Ms. Claudia Moe. Just now, I heard Undersecretary say she asked for our understanding. This is just the first step. I don't know how many years we have to continue to be understanding. Some members of concerned groups already waited for long enough. I know that the Food and Health Bureau is mostly concerned about the human safety and human public health. I understand that Dr. Cohen-Mann and Undersecretary Yu are very busy. But in fact, you failed to do it properly. The whole trial program, only some 30 dogs involved. What about the other organization with just some 3 members? They did it to over 1,000 animals. It's really a shame. So this is it just a very trivial issue under AFCD, so that you only do things very perfunctorily? You only come and tell us in 2011, for example, there is the Animal Watch program. Well, I feel outraged. I see no objection, right? I won't say it's all rubbish, but well, I have 2 questions. First is to the police. Dr. Cohen-Mann promised me in this council that he would discuss with the Security Bureau on the issue of animal police, and there was no follow-up. So what is the current position about animal police? Next question for AFCD. Can you take on Ms. Holloy's suggestion? Can you extend the days of detention from 4 to 14? Now, if it can't be as long as 14, how about 12? Because many pet owners feel heartbroken because they can't allocate their pets. Professor Whitford.
Statement. Of course, we all agree that we would need animal welfare laws in Hong Kong. We don't have any at the moment. But then the fact that you said that that's what we really need, and we don't need any animal police squad, because that would be, you were saying, it would be like trying to plaster an open roof. I was rather curious, and if there's time, I would like to hear if you have anything further.
Just some 40 seconds left, so over to you, police, your response. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, member, for your question. The police position is this. As before, we share the same objective. We'd like to jointly tackle animal cruelty, and we launched a program called Animal Watch Program and Animal Watch Scheme in 2011, and we have seen the result through a multi-agency approach. We work with the AFCD and SPCA in relation to the investigation of animal cruelty cases. We have acquired much experience, and we have a smooth cooperation. All right, please respond to other questions later. Mr. Raymond Wong, 4 minutes. Now, recently about the cruelty against a cat case, the culprit was sentenced to 16 months imprisonment. This sends a positive message to the community that we spend no effort in combating animal cruelty cases, about people and animals coexisting in the society harmoniously. I really question whether this can be achieved.
For instance, man can do a lot for animals, but sometimes you may not be able to control the animals. Of course, man has to do more. So the government's policy has been, in respect of stray dogs with a bad temperament that cause nuisance, you destroy all of them humanely. And now the TNR program is more humane by comparison. But it's difficult to convince the residents. Now, I'm glad to hear that some district council members treat you as angels. Now, if that's the case for each district council, that would be nice, but that's not my understanding. For instance, looking at the government document, it said that in Yuen Long there were 2 schemes, two sites, selections that had to be put aside because of objections. Now, many people in the districts doubt the effectiveness of the program. So we must publicize the successful cases. Now, they feel that the stray dogs are still around. They still phone up and say that they are stray dogs. So the administration and the animal welfare groups should step up the publicity. I think the experience that you elaborated on should be publicized more in the community, and the government merely welcomes their efforts, but how does it help? Now, I thank Mr. Wong for his comments. Now, on increased publicity by AFCD, now all along the department has engaged in publicity and has established a dedicated team. Now, this team is engaged in public education, and they can elaborate on this over the years. What I mean is, Professor, having heard all the NGOs on what they did and the difficulties they encountered, now you and these groups are on the same front, but how are you helping them? I'm not asking what the FCD is doing. I'm asking what you are doing for them. perhaps I can invite the FCD to talk about this because they have been in close contact and with these groups. Now, on the publicity efforts, the main objective is to reduce the number of stray animals and to enhance animal welfare. Now, our current direction. Now, of course, there is publicity and education, but what are you doing for these groups? You appreciate their work, right? If they have difficulty, how are you helping them? If they have difficulty. Now, we are focusing on the TNR program. The community groups do the TNR on their own, using their own time and resources. Now, the question is, how is the FCD helping them? Or are you saying that you must follow the procedures and the site selection? Let them answer, please, Mr. Wong. Any specific way in which you can help them? Now, the TNR program, please continue. We've discussed this for many years because we feel that based on the information available, there is not yet a very scientific basis in terms of data. So we are undertaking consultation and finding a site for a pilot program because we think that not all sites or locations are suitable for the pilot programs. Yes, so you are selecting Yuen Long and Chow Chow sites. Now, but the outlying islands are different from the urban areas, right? Next, Ms. Alice Mack. Now, Chairman, I have a simple question. Firstly, since the TNR program is very popular, as we have heard, I'd like to ask the administration, is there any chance that can be implemented ASAP or in the course of your pilot program, you try to find other sites besides the ones mentioned in the document? Also, some volunteer groups, we have just heard, are doing these pilot programs by themselves. How is the government helping them in terms of legislation or in terms of resources? Also, I'd like to ask the police, maybe I should ask the administration. Now, actually, in the council meeting, I asked the secretary. Now, many people abandon the animals. Now, at the New Year's Eve last year, Chinese New Year's Eve, I collected a stray squirrel dog from the street, but it died 2 days later because it was too old. Now, these animals that do not have owners, apart from existing legislation, what is the government able to do? Now, if the animals are abandoned, the courts award no sentences no higher than 16 months. Now, whether stray animals on the streets or community animals, whatever you call them, they are abandoned, right? Now, will the Secretary consider amending the legislation? Will you undertake a review? Now, we have recently reviewed the legislation for sale of animals. Now, will you consider reviewing the definition of stray animals, for instance? Now, many groups mention the animal police. Now, the police talked about the animal watch scheme. Now, you have such a scheme, so people have high expectations, but it seems that these expectations are not really met. Now, I have a friend who is a vet. Now, he said, now, so originally I will support the animal police. Now, you can have an animal police team, because that releases the pressure for other police staff. So the government can look at it from this alternate perspective. Now, this would be more fair for your colleagues. Now, which of these questions you want them to answer? 4 minutes, so the administration can maybe select only one of these questions. Now, let her answer, please. Now, you said that the TNR should be undertaken as quickly as possible. We hope that the TNR legislative work can be completed in the first half of 2014, and then it can be implemented. Now, on community actions, now we hope that the AFCD can answer, because we do provide assistance on abandoning of animals. We do have a publicity and education program so that the animals will not be abandoned by the public. Or maybe the rest of the answer can come later. I will answer now, and then Chen Chi-chun and Albert Chen. I will ask the question now. Now, we see that the AFCD has not identified the sites. The pilot scheme is not yet implemented, and yet the public is already doing this. It's been doing this for years. Now, what the question is asked, how are you helping them? Now, you say that the pilot scheme should determine whether the approach is successful, and yet the public has already been doing this for years. Perhaps you can invite the FCD to learn from your experience, to look at your data, and then you will not have to wait so long. Now, you have been doing this at different sites, at Lion Rock, so you have more than 3 sites. The FCD can send some staff to take a look. FCD? Mr. Sid? Concerning the TNR program of the 18 districts, as the Undersecretary said, we have already focused on the Yuen Long and Cheung Chau sites. We hope to get the legislative work done, and then we can go full steam ahead. Now, on how we can help these groups, now the FCD is considering engaging an outside consultant to assess whether these locations are suitable, and we will also provide vaccination support, etc. Will the deputations please stay quiet? Now, the question is, the civic groups are already doing this. Can you send somebody to take a look? Is there any civic group that is willing to open yourselves to let the government come and take a look? There are already 5. Well, we can open up, but we don't arrest us. We just want to see whether there is some experience that they can make use of. Now, can you liaise with these groups? You go and take a look. So there's a government initiative, and that has reference to the civic efforts. Then there would be more information available. So will those groups that are willing to open themselves up for the administration, please talk to the AFCD afterwards? a little bit of time left, I'd like to ask the Undersecretary. Now, Ms. Amanda Whitford mentioned just now that CAP 169 is outdated. That's dated from 1935. She felt that the legislation should be amended and we should learn from US, UK, Australia, New Zealand, Taiwan, so that we have an animal welfare law.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The administration, on a regular basis, does review our existing legislation. This ordinance, the Prevention of Cruelty Against Animals ordinance, we think that there are advantages because there are clear definitions on cruelty against animals, for example, torture, physical abuse, etc. And I think it can fully fulfill its function of preventing cruelty against animals. My question is whether the CAP 169 will be amended. We have regular reviews, but at present we feel that this piece of law is fulfilling its role and function and on the point of duty of care. In fact, the act of cruelty against animals include improper conveyance of animals, caging of animals, or whether sufficient food and water has been supplied to animals. And we think that under the existing legislation, we can classify the breaches. Well, I hope the administration and Professor yourself can read carefully Professor's paper, because it's not just about cruelty of animals, but about the law. So perhaps we'll stop here. Another member, Mr. Ray Chan. About animal welfare law, I think the problem lies with the fact that the focus of the policies is wrong. We should safeguard the rights of animals first. We should put that before letting people coexist with animals in society, because by latter you're putting people first. If we can't coexist harmoniously, animals will be sacrificed, so that when you face opposition from district councils, you immediately retract. About animal welfare, we should put animals' welfare first. And today I just received from the AFCD the figures concerning stray dogs euthanized in 2013. Some 5,000, a drop from less than 6% comparing to 2010, meaning that on average some 15 dogs were put down on a daily basis. Now, a crucial question hasn't been asked. This policy of euthanizing dogs after detention for 4 days in AMC, I understand that some dogs are kept longer, but what exactly is the policy guideline? Is it 4 days, 10 days, or what? Can you explain more clearly? Even if some animals in the end are rehomed, but if welfare, they are suitable for rehoming, if the welfare organizations cannot arrange for owners to adopt them, they will eventually be euthanized. So something should be done to review the situation. And about this tiny trial program, last time the Yuen Long District Council was consulted, and initially there was no objection, and then there was strong opposition. What exactly happened? Today another deputation spoke. They said that in Wong Tai Sin they were welcome. So you should perhaps bring them along, and when you consult the District Council, and ask them to prepare the PowerPoint presentation. And now members ask, what help are you offering these organizations? But I'm not asking that. I'm asking how you cannot get in the way of their work. For example, the CCCP program, the ears of cats are clipped, and then those cats are caught, and then you ask those organizations to reclaim their pets. Thank you, Mr. Chan. We have all along attached importance to animal welfare. So apart from what was mentioned just now, the views and some, shortcomings at the moment, the AFCD has indeed deployed much resources in improving the situation. And our AFCD colleagues are here. Your views have been heard loud and clear. As for operational details, I can defer to my colleagues of AFCD. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chan. About stray dogs being kept at AMC of the AFCD, on average, over the past few years, they have been kept for more than 4 days. For those animals microchipped and licensed, when they come to the Animal Management Center, they can stay there for a long time for us to locate the owners, as long as several months. Basically, for unlicensed animals, we would contact animal welfare organizations to arrange for rehoming of these animals. On average, even for unlicensed animals, we do keep them for more than 4 days. And actually, as long as 8 days. Whether their stay can be further extended, well, it depends on whether we have space. Now, my question is very clear. Your guideline says 4 days, as in your paper. So my point is whether you can tell your staff to keep it for more than 4 days. Can you amend the guidelines? Well, I may have to discuss with my colleagues and look at the guidelines. I think Ms. Claudia Mo also asked this question, whether it can be extended to 14 days. So go back and think about it and report back to the panel. Mr. Albert Chan. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not a member of this panel, but I am also concerned about this issue, about animal rights. I recalled back then about the issue of buffaloes in Tai O. I discussed with the back then the AFD how they could how their lives could be spared, and avian flu caused hundreds of thousands of chickens to be killed, and for stray dogs, tens of thousands are killed every year. If we put up a large sign, we can put up the figures of how many dogs being killed. You can see the cumulative figures, and we will become international headlines and news. This will be this will go into the Guinness Book of World Records. I mean, the dogs killed by our government. So the AFCD is really shameful. Why can't AFCD manage it more properly? Why can't it deliver its service more properly? This is indeed a slaughter. So, as Undersecretary, you should consider why this problem remains. And I'm grateful to all the animal welfare groups and deputations here. If there are as many people as you, all of you, who are concerned with universal suffrage, we can achieve some progress. Now, about your policy, first of all, on whether the 4 days detention can be extended. And the Hong Kong U professor also mentioned whether you can amend the law. And thirdly, about the mechanism, of course, there is pressure coming from district councils. As the government, we have an executive-led system. Can you change your policy so that, first of all, the number of stray animals can be reduced substantially, so that the number of animals killed by the government can be reduced as well? Any responsive measures? You have 1.5 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chan. On improvement measures, the AFCD have been implementing improvement measures. For example, an interdepartmental group. Well, don't tell me the details. Just tell me from now on, when are you going to set up a working group so that now all these will be neutered, etc., etc. Do you have a mechanism to implement these? And are you going to reduce the number of animals killed per year so that 10 years down the road, no more dogs and cats will be killed? Yes. What about the Undersecretary? Yes. Can you guarantee that after 10 years, no dogs and cats will be put down? Now, about the TNR trials program, we do have a performance pledge. Can the government take this undertaking? 10 years down the road, no more dogs and cats will be put down. No more dogs and cats will be slaughtered. If this cannot be achieved, what's the purpose? You can change your name from AFCD to Cats and Dogs Slaughterhouse. Why do you call this AFCD? Conservation. In fact, as cited in our figures, since 2008, the number of dogs and cats put down by AFCD have been reduced. In fact, the reason of this reduction is the labor of these people here. I'm asking about any specific measure of the AFCD. Otherwise, we will throw the excrement of cats and dogs at you. Yes, we understand that this is some progress, but we won't just stay put. We have gone through a great deal of difficulty in identifying 2 sites, and we do have a performance pledge to further reduce the number. Next, Mr. Stephen Ho, followed by Mr. Wu Chi-wai. In 2006, the administration passed the legislation, the amendment, and the penalty has been increased. And the problems, however, remained. And recently, the offenders were sentenced to 16 months imprisonment, and that sends a positive message to the community. And I am grateful to deputations here who have come to express their views. I wonder if all my questions can be answered, whether there is enough time. First, animal police. Second question, support for NGOs and the administration's approach. Thirdly, public's awareness, education. By analogy, rather than a marriage counselor, you should perhaps give counseling sessions to couples before their marriage. So prevention is better than cure. It's better than to euthanize animals later. So I hope the administration can respond to these points. And deputations here, I see they would also like to ask questions following members' questions or to clarify the points. So I will give some time to Mark. Well, a point of clarification, I'm not a vet. To respond to Mr. Raymond Wong's point, Wong Tai Sin, the district councillors, acknowledged our success on the TNVR program. They called us the angels of Wong Tai Sin. Yes, this is true. We have it's been recorded on audio as well. It took us 2 years to go through every step. We don't just lobby the support of district councillors by speaking to them or writing to them. We show them our results through our hard labor. When they found that no more stray dogs were running around in Wong Tai Sin after we introduced the program, they acknowledged our success. Now, if you face objection at district councils, that's because you haven't actually implemented TNVR, you haven't actually implemented publicity and education. Back then, we had another trial site in Ho Chung, and the organization went to Ho Chung and spoke to the residents. They knew nothing about the TNVR. They said the government did not tell them anything about TNVR at all. If you don't even have a pamphlet, how can you be successful? Mr. Raymond Wong asked what you can do to help NGOs. Now, my answer is simple. It's already a great help if you could spare from arresting us. We don't need support, not even money. Just allow the community to do what they want. I think there is much room for cooperation between the administration and NGOs. Now, if indeed there are breaches of the law, enforcement action will have to be taken, but I suppose after the meeting you can put your heads together. Mr. Mack talked about publicity and education, so there's a chance for you to clarify. And about 4 days detention rule before animals are put down, I don't think this is the actual situation. Now, I'm not in favor of that approach. I just give the administration some time to clarify.
Now, on the 4 days, Dr. Sid already said that it's not actually 4 days, and colleagues said that we will go back and look at the guidelines. This we will do. Also, I thank Mr. Mack for providing us with a little bit more information. And it's been mentioned that the groups have had very good experience at the districts, and we now have 2 pilot locations, and the FCD welcomes your communications with them so that we are more successful with these pilot schemes. Now, on publicity, perhaps the FCD can further inform us. I also agree that prevention is very important for animal care. So I believe the scheme will include prevention. We don't have the time, but please take home the point that education is information. It's important. First round, Wu Chi Wai and then Sid Ho, 4 minutes each. And then we have a little bit of time. If you want to extend a little the meeting, then we have 2 minutes each for the second round speakers, and then we will draw a line there. Wu Chi Wai, Mr. Mack mentioned Wong Tai Sin. I'm a district councillor for Wong Tai Sin, so I can talk about the experience. Several years ago, the discussion was quite normal, and then a council member asked what will be the role of the AFCD when the NGOs come. The AFCD colleagues said that they will recede into the background and leave it to the NGO. Then the atmosphere changed. So the council members couldn't believe in them because they think that the government, with all its resources, are already retreating. Now, actually, it's not because the NGOs don't do a good job. Mr. Mack touched upon the crucial issue. If you want the NGOs to help you, you must change the law so that they can do it legally. Now, the AFCD, when you have these groups helping out in the community, you shouldn't go and arrest these workers. Now, when the groups engage in TNR, they actually mark the dogs. So you can distinguish these dogs from abandoned dogs. you should arrest those that abandon the dogs and not those that engage in TNR for the dogs. Also, in the community, you should consider these. Now, firstly, you need people to engage in it. And secondly, you must let these groups have places to care for the dogs. Now, this goes for Chok Yuen too. Now, you cannot just tell people to go to Tai Tong, go to a hill there. You should find a location where that is accessible by transport, and you shouldn't just identify a remote location in the hills. So, of course, I cannot comment on how you conduct your pilot scheme, but you must change your attitude. That is the AFCD's attitude, and how you can facilitate the groups with legislation rather than stand in the way. Will you answer? I thank Mr. Wu for his comments. Now we hear them, so unless the FCD wishes to supplement, the Permanent Secretary, please. Now, we will send our people to Yuen Long and Cheung Chau. We hope to do a good job. Now, we may have certain shortcomings in the past, but we have the determination and we will invest the resources. We will follow up. We will conduct the studies. In terms of implementation, if it's not within the scheme areas, for those who are doing TNR outside of your pilot locations, will you stand in their way? We will not stand in their way. So will you assist them? I would put it this way. We welcome them for helping us out, but we hope that you understand that when there is legislation, we must enforce the legislation. We are civil servants. So the question is not resolved at all, notwithstanding all our discussion. It's said earlier that the FCD will try to liaise with these groups to see how you can cooperate or support them. But there's the law enforcement issue. The police is here. They understand the motives of these groups. It's not against the policy goals. So Sit Ho, it lost in the first round. I'm sorry there was a time clash, so I have come as quickly as possible. I thank Mr. Mack for doing a lot of work with the district councils, but the district councils, they move from one term to another. I remember that in 04, 07, at the Central and Western District Council, there was this change of term. The TNR was originally welcome, but in the new term, the attitude was changed. So please talk to your colleagues in your party so that they adopt this same attitude in the district councils. Otherwise, it's like in the case of bus schedules, things come to a standstill in the DCs. Now, if you issue these licenses without limit, and if you do not do a good job in rehoming to to assist the rehoming of dogs, then you indirectly increase the number of stray animals and you make things difficult for the community groups. So you must be more strict in issuing the license for these breeders. Also, the police representatives are here. There have been these cases of mistreatment of cats and dogs. Now, some concerned people inquired with the police. They said that we will only respond to the family members. Now, who will have family or other relations with the stray animals? Because the animal has already been abandoned by its owner. Of course, the person who inquires has no relationship to the animal. That is an absurd answer from the absurd response from the police. Of course, I understand you may not respond to everyone who phones up, but you must have a system. Either you cooperate with the community groups, those animal care groups. You should release the information on the investigations of cruelty to animals, or you should regularly give an account to the community. You shouldn't just hide all the information and give these absurd responses. Any response from the police or any promises? I think Ms. Holroy has raised her hand. I have a question. Can you allow me a little time? This is the stage for the members. Perhaps you have to get the member, one of the members, to ask the questions for you. Perhaps, actually, I think I have asked part of the question for her, I believe. First, I thank Ms. Ho for calling upon the political parties to support animal care efforts in the district councils. Now, as for the licensing issue in relation to CAP 139, now we are doing the work. We are going to make it more strict. Now, after consultation, we have received some viewpoints, so the FCD is looking at those. We hope to report to you later. Now, as for the police, perhaps the chairperson can allow them some time to answer. The line has been drawn. Second round, 3 members, 2 minutes each. You will make a collective response later, please. Claudia Mo. Now, I said that there will be a consultant report on the pilot scheme. Now, I have little confidence in consultant reports. Now, how much do you budget for these consultants? I strongly request that you allow these groups sitting here to apply to join you in these pilot schemes. Now, my second question is, the FCD, when it catches the animals, it causes the animals pain and trauma. How will the police deal with that? I like the AFCD to answer first. Will you invite the NGOs to come and join you? Dr. Sid? Now, for these 2 pilot schemes, we already invited 2 animal care groups to work with us. As for the consultant, is your invitation selective? No. These 2 groups all along have approached us on their initiative. So it's hereditary. The police, any response? Will you oversee whether the AFCD, when it catches the animals, cause the animals pain and trauma. We do not comment on hypothetical cases. If we give you evidence, if you show you the photos, will you take action? Now, we hope that the point is taken, that unnecessary pain should not be caused the animals when they are being caught.
Ms. Alice Mack. Madam Chair, you used some of my time, and I wanted to ask the Undersecretary this. As far as the law is concerned, will you consider treating abandonment of animals a serious offense so that you can deter owners from abandoning their animals? Next question for the police. Will you consider setting up the animal police? Dr. Sid first. Thank you, Ms. Mack, for your question. Thank you, Madam Chair. On abandonment of animals, according to Cap 421, any person shall be fined and imprisoned for abandoning animals. And we have successful prosecution cases in the past. About lost dogs, straying in public places, every year we have hundreds of prosecution cases. Can you supply information after the meeting in relation to animal abandonment? How many cases have been prosecuted? Any prosecution figures on abandonment of animals? Supplement this afterwards, please. Lastly, second question, Madam Chair. Animal police. Yes, animal police. Who would take this question? Police, please. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, member, for your question. We already replied to this question. On receiving public's complaint on suspected animal cruelty cases, we would deploy uniformed officers to the scene immediately, because this is the quickest way. It is important to locate witnesses and gather evidence. So it's not about how many teams of officers we have dedicated for this purpose. All throughout the police force, we have the same objective, that is to prevent cruelty against animals. Mr. Ray Chan, this question has been asked about the CCCP. Under this program, some AFCD officers caught cats that have their ears clipped, and the organizations were required to pay a sum of money to claim the cats. No, we don't ask for a sum of money for claiming those cats under CCCP. We just contact the relevant organizations for claiming their cats. What about dogs? For dogs microchipped, we will locate their owners. That means that never happened? Owners have never, or volunteers have never been asked? Oh, if that's if he's the owner, of course the owner will be required to pay the costs of detention. Any other questions? So, thank you, deputations, for coming here today. The police, AFCD, as well as members members of the Food and Health Bureau. Deputations, if you would like to submit written submissions, please do so. There is a point about exploring the amendment to the legislation and discussion with NGOs and considering whether the days of detention can be extended to beyond 4 days. So we'll like the AFCD and the administration to reply to us. Of course, if more resources can be deployed to support NGOs in any form possible so that they can so that a closer cooperation can be forged. Anyway, thank you all the deputations for attending this meeting. You may be excused. We have another item to discuss. All right, thank you. Also, thank you, administration, for attending this item. Next item is proposed updating of the schedules to the pesticide residues in food regulation. This meeting is originally scheduled to adjourn at 5:30. I'm afraid we might not have sufficient time for this item, so members, your views, if there is no objection, I'll extend the meeting by 15 minutes, but we may finish the meeting on time. Any objection from members? No? All right, then the meeting will be extended to 5:45, but we may not have to extend it if we can finish it on time. So let's welcome representatives from the administration to this item in relation to the updating of the schedules to pesticide residues. So we only have very few members left for this item. So 3 minutes. Would the administration please spend 3 minutes to walk us through this proposal? Mr. Chan, Philip? Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Let me brief members on the administration's proposal of updating Schedule 1 to the pesticide residues in food regulation CAP 132 CM. The Director of Food and Environmental Hygiene on the 26th of April 2012, in exercise of the power under Section 55, Bracket 1 of the Public Health and Municipal Services Ordinance CAP 132, made this regulation. The Legislative Council also completed scrutiny of the regulation in June 2012, and the regulation will come into operation after a transitional period of 2 years on the 1st of August this year. The regulation aims to strengthen the regulation of pesticide residues in food, to protect public health and promote harmonization between local and international standards. The standards is developed by the Codex, which forms the backbone of the regulatory framework, supplemented by standards adopted by countries where major food exporting countries. And the regulation also stipulates certain pesticide food pairs. That is, it specifies a list of maximum residue limits, MRLs, or extraneous maximum residue limits, EMRLs. There is a difference. For MRL, is the pesticide residues found in food, and the pesticides are directly used on food, whereas for EMRL, it refers to pesticide residue arising from environmental sources. For example, such pesticides might have been used on the soil, and the residue therefore left behind contaminating such food. And the regulation specifies the maximum residue limits and extraneous maximum residue limits. And in formulating the Schedule 1, we have drawn reference from the standards recommended by Codex in 2011, supplemented by standards of the mainland and other major food exporting countries to Hong Kong available at the time, and also the views received from stakeholders during the public consultation held in July to September 2011. Now, as we rely heavily on imported food, we have conducted risk assessments to ensure that they are adequate to protect public health in Hong Kong. And we have also informed the trade that we will update the schedules in regard to the latest international developments on the application on pesticides, particularly changes to Codex standards and proposals received from the trade. And the Director of Food and Environmental Hygiene would consider the proposals on a case-by-case basis, taking into account whether the limits concerned could pass the risk assessment scrutiny based on local food consumption pattern, etc., before deciding whether the schedule should be amended. So we have drawn reference from the available standards and the latest changes to MRLs adopted by Codex in 2012 and 2013, and all the proposals put forward by stakeholders since the enactment of the regulation last June, in June 2012. And our proposal is to update the pesticides in Schedule 1. And in summary, for the MRLs or EMRLs listed in Schedule 1, 431 will be added, 347 will be removed, and 417 or 449, the Chinese version, will be revised. Overall speaking, they will increase from 7,083 to 7,167. And one pesticide will be added to Schedule 1, while 3 others will be removed. As a result, the number of pesticides in Schedule 1 will be reduced from 360 to 358. All the details are provided in the papers. I shall not repeat them. We propose to table the amendments to the regulation in LegCo in the first quarter of 2014. I'm happy to take questions from members. So, any questions from members? Ms. Sit Ho, I see she's raised her hand. So, Ms. Ho. Well, we're not scientific officers. We don't know whether they're harmful or not. We can't even pronounce the terminology. But as far as the principles are concerned, I'd like to seek clarification. In particular, in Para 10, there are 3 pesticides originally on Schedule 1, and they will be removed. And the reason for their removal is that there is no international consensus on whether these pesticides are harmful or not. Now, originally, they are listed in Schedule 1 based on some reasons, of course. If our goal is to safeguard public health, we should abide by the highest standards, not the lowest standard. If we doubt whether the ingestion of some substance is harmful, we should not ingest the substance. We should avoid it. So I don't know why these pesticides will be removed from Schedule 1. What are the reasons? And the so-called stakeholders, what are they? Is there any commercial or conflict of interest involved? In particular, if the stakeholder is someone from the trade, and say if he's an importer or manufacturer of these pesticides, of course, he will ask for relaxation. So what are these stakeholders, or the stakeholder? How widely are these pesticides used? Is it that they are rarely used? If so, it's no harm that they continue to exist on the list. Mr. Philip Chan. Now, we agree that in setting standards, we would like to safeguard public health. That's why we formulate we make this regulation. And we would like to align our standards with international standards. And after we set these standards, we mustn't cause excessive impact on food importation. Because if we are to adopt standards, we need to check whether these standards are suitable or not. And As far as the MRLs or EMRLs of these three pesticides are concerned, after our review, we find that there is no international consensus on the regulation of these pesticides. Now, but to supplement, as mentioned in the paper, although these three pesticides will be removed from Schedule 1 in our proposal, if the residues of these three pesticides are detected in food in the future, the Center for Food Safety would conduct risk assessment accordingly to determine whether the consumption of the food concerned will be dangerous or prejudicial to public health. So there will be gatekeeping, and this is how we implement the safeguard. Dr. Ho, anything to supplement?
Just now, Mr. Chen already said that we try above all to safeguard public health. Now, with the removal of these three pesticides, we still conduct risk assessment and we can still regulate effectively to protect public health. How do you go about this risk assessment? Because you said that internationally there is no consensus on the regulation of these three materials in terms of residue limits and residue definitions. Now, there is no consensus on the regulation standards, but there are some international standards on health indicators. We can refer to these indicators and examine the pesticide levels in these agricultural products, and if the standards are exceeded, we can take steps to regulate. Now, under the law, when the Director of Food and Environmental Health looks at each case to see whether the residues can damage public health, he will consider these factors. Under regulation it says that the pathology, the safety reference values, the nature of the pesticide and how much residue is found, the consumption mode, that is, how much people usually consume of that food item, because the quantity, that is the daily intake, yes, total consumption, the regulation concerned, the information supplied by the importer or supplier, the analysis by our chemists, the international organizations, what information they supply. So the regulations stipulate what we should consider. So these are objective standards. My question is, Ms. Ho, Sid Ho, mentioned the principles. How do you decide what to remove, what to add? The guiding principles. I know you follow international standards. Of course, you have to follow those. And then on the mainland, they have their own list of pesticides. Now, will the prohibited pesticides differ from those internationally or from that list in Hong Kong? Are there differences in the limits and in the listed names? If so, the food imports from China to Hong Kong, do they follow mainland standards or Hong Kong standards? Because we believe they should follow Hong Kong standards. Hong Kong standards are probably stricter. Now, we first look at the Codex standards. If there are no such standards, then we look at the standards available in the country from which the food is imported. So we do not try to decide on whether we should be lenient or not. We look at the result of our risk assessment if that food is consumed in Hong Kong. So we look at our food habits in Hong Kong and the standards that I referred to just now. Now, would there be cases where certain pesticides are prohibited on the mainland and yet not prohibited in Hong Kong, even after amendment? Yes, Dr. Ho? We now mainly use the MRLs for control, and it's stipulated what pesticides can be used for which agricultural products. If other pesticides are used that are detrimental to public health, we can then enforce the law. And just to supplement, when we specify these MRLs, we have reference to international standards and we conduct experiments in the field. We see after the pesticides are applied, after a period of time and the pests are killed, how much residue there is. Now, it's not necessarily the less the better, because these pesticide may not be sufficient to kill the pests. And after we learn the results, then we conduct a risk assessment to see whether the level is such that people's health can be safeguarded. Sid Ho, I think you have to ask after my turn. The officials have not answered me completely. Now, who is that objector? And these several pesticides at this moment, what foods are they found in? Foods being supplied to Hong Kong. Now, people need to know you apply risk assessment methods to protect us for certain foods. You don't put them on the schedule. Mr. Chen, that stakeholder, that department in our country offered the comment, and then after we receive the comment, we analyze and then we make the decision. So that's not a stakeholder. That's an organization of the state. When you talk about stakeholder, I would think that's a commercial organization, perhaps the manufacturer of the pesticide, or a supplier of food, or a medical body. So I think that's not the way to write a paper. You should give a clear picture of the identity. Now, if a state organization making the proposal and then you amend the legislation, then I will make sure that we have a subcommittee to scrutinize your legislation, and maybe we shouldn't be we will not certainly accept your legislation in haste. Now, when we talk about stakeholder, now the country that supplies the food is considered a stakeholder in our regulatory framework, and not just China, but other supplying countries such as the U.S. offered their comments too. Now, the food is consumed in Hong Kong. Now, it's not the exporter who decides, it's the importing country that has to be the gatekeeper. That's true, that's right. So when we receive these comments offered from other countries, we will consider them individually. We have a risk assessment process to decide whether we accept the standard. May I finish? Now, regarding the negative vetting period, as we said, after the director makes the regulation, he has to have a negative vetting period at LegCo, that is 49 days or 7 weeks. So you say a state organization is a stakeholder and there are stakeholders abroad. Let's look at para 3. Now, the codex, that's spelled out, that's a U.S. organization. Why is it that when it's a mainland organization, you just put it vaguely as a stakeholder? I agree. When you supply a document in the future, you should identify who is the stakeholder. Now, because that affects the schedule, so you should let the members know when you submit the amendment legislation. The members will need to know who proposed the issue, the matter. Now, and also these 3 pesticides, in which imported foods are they usually found? If it's a mainland organization that proposes it, then the farms on the mainland will supply the food, but what types of food? Can you tell us what foods are they usually found in, Dr. Ho? Now, first, the first type is found in many types of plants. Now, that's the triphenylidine, that's in hydroxide, that's in cucumber, etc. The other is cediazuron, that's mainly in meat, that is in the fat of cows, sheep, in some milk, and it's also found in some agricultural products like lotus seeds. Now, the first one was phosphatile aluminium. The third one is triphenylidine hydroxide. That's mainly in animals like pigs, cows, and sheep. So if you take away the 3 pesticides, then the Center for Food Safety will no longer test for these 3 pesticides in the future. As I said earlier, if we detect these pesticides in the food items under the law, we can still conduct a risk assessment to determine whether it is a threat to health. Now, when we will make an assessment of the risk of the pesticide as it's contained in the food. I don't agree that this is the standard applied from the exporting country, and therefore we must accept it. Now, so that's how the milk powder problem arose. Now, the exporter decides to apply a certain standard, and therefore we have to go along with the exporting country and lower our safety standards. Now, I will certainly object when the sub-legislation comes to LegCo, and I will propose the establishment of a subcommittee on this piece of sub-legislation. Now, we, as a panel, we can inform the public we do not support such relaxation. We want to guard the gate more strictly. Now, members seem concerned about relaxing and removing 3 pesticides from the schedule. And it seems that the administration is not fully convincing us that there is no threat to public health. Any other questions?
Now, if there are no other questions, you will be submitting another paper to us, or what? Will you reconsider the questions raised by members today, in particular in Para 10? Yes, we'll go back and consider all the views. Now, yes, the principle is that we would like to be more stringent, because we can't inspect all the food imported already. So if something happens, who should be responsible? So please reconsider whether these 3 pesticides should be removed. You really need to convince us, or it will be quite hard for us to persuade other members to support this proposal. Any other questions? If not, thank you for attending this meeting. We also have an item under AOB, and that is to remind members that we have arranged for a visit to Mancam Toll Food Control Office, which will be held on the 24th of February 2014 between 6 and 9 p.m. We need to reach the BCP, the border checkpoint, and see how random inspection on food imported from mainland to Hong Kong is done. So please sign up for it, and it's first come, first served. And to panel members, if there are vacancies, it will be open to all members. And transport will be arranged to set out from LegCo at 6 p.m. that day. Any other questions? If not, then the meeting's adjourned today. Thank you.